Hello and welcome to Ladies of Lore, the podcast where we take all of the most wonderful women of mythology and folklore from all over the world and we unpick, unravel and explore their origins, their stories and how they've changed through time to arrive in today's modern world. I'm India. Do you remember me? It's been a little while. It's been a while. Life has been busy, but I have now finished this year of university, and that's the main thing really that was kind of holding me back, holding me up. I had lots of things to write about. I had to write about empires, lots of words about empires, but I did it. It's done, which means I have so much more free time for you guys now, which is great. Now look, I'm very sorry that I've been a bit rubbish, but I feel like I'm coming back to you with something that's probably worth the wait, because I'm coming back to you with an interview that I did with Jennifer Saint. Jennifer Saint. I'm going to say it again. Jennifer Saint. Jennifer Saint. Can you believe it? Because I can't. I'm genuinely so thrilled to be able to share this conversation that I had with Jennifer with you guys. Like I'm absolutely gobsmacked that I got to talk to her about her new book, This Immortal Heart, which follows Aphrodite. Now, I was lucky enough to actually get sent a copy of this book, and it is so beautiful. It is beautiful, gorgeous. Like, it's so pretty. Honestly, guys, it's beautiful. And I really mean it when I tell you that you need to go out and read this book and buy this book, but actually buy it. Like, buy the physical version, because it's gorgeous. Now, I'm an audiobook fan. I am a fan of reading on your devices. But sometimes a book is just so gorgeous that you just have to, you just have to buy it. And this is one of those books. It was honestly so incredible to get to sit down and talk with Jennifer about her process, about her thoughts on Aphrodite before and after writing this wonderful book, what makes her tick, a little bit of Taylor Swift. We talked about Taylor Swift, we did. And yeah, I'm just absolutely so honoured, so grateful for Jennifer, for her time, for her just to come and chat with little old me. If you're on the Patreon, you would have already seen this, because I actually released the full video. Yes, video version. I don't like putting my face out there, but I did do it. So it is over on Patreon for all paid tiers. I can't wait to get back on giving you content on Patreon and on here. Honestly, I've missed you guys like there is no tomorrow. Is that how that saying goes? I don't know if it is. Actually, is that how that saying? Let me know if that's how that saying goes, because I don't think it is. But yes, I did put the video on there. So if you do go and sign up to the Patreon, it is there, but it's not an obligation. You don't have to watch me and Jennifer Saint talk to each other, but you could. And I just want to make sure you know that you could. Anyway, you don't need to hear me yapping on anymore, do you? So I'm going to hand it over to me like 2 days ago so you can listen to my conversation with Jennifer Saint. It's lovely to meet you.
Yeah, you too. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know how much you know about me or my podcast or anything like that, but I'm India. I host Ladies of Lore, which is a podcast specifically for women in mythology. So that's all I talk about, and it's just the most, I mean, as you know, the most amazing subject area.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
very much up my street, definitely.
yes, yeah, absolutely. So no, it was such a surprise and a lovely surprise to get an email about the chance to have a chat with you. Yeah, honestly, it's such a massive honor to have you here. We're here probably mainly to talk about your upcoming release, This Immortal Heart. I actually got a copy of it. It arrived yesterday. It's beautiful.
Oh yeah, it's absolutely gorgeous, the
Yeah,
artwork.
yeah, it's so beautiful. It's lovely. So I'm really excited to just jump into what I'm sure will be a wonderful conversation with you.
Right.
Um, I think my first question for you would be really is, have you always been drawn to mythology, or was there a particular moment that sort of where these stories captured you and you thought, oh, this is going to be my thing that I write about?
So I have been obsessed with Greek mythology, like for as long as I can remember. I was like very much one of those kids.
Yeah,
So
same.
And I would trace it back to my parents had friends who lived in Cyprus. So when I was really
Oh,
small,
wow.
like the first holiday that I went on, some of my earliest memories are from that trip, those trips that we did. And it was really specifically, I remember being in the amphitheatre at Kurion in Cyprus, and just this weird feeling of standing in a place where history happened,
Mm,
which is just it never ever stops being a magical feeling. Kind of wherever I go, to the Acropolis, to the Colosseum, anything like that, where you walk where people have been walking for those thousands of years, and
mm,
you can put yourself in those shoes and you can think I'm looking at the same things as people would have looked at when these stories were fresh and alive and brand new, and
mm,
that keeps them fresh and alive and brand new for us today. I think the way that mythology is so very much rooted in that sense of place and in that very um it's so grounded in history.
mm.
um there is just something that I have never been able to get over from that initial.
Same. No,
Yeah,
it's you
exactly.
can't you can't if you start thinking about it. It is incredible. I went to Athens a few years ago, and it was just the exact same thing as what you're saying. You sort of stand there
Mhm.
and you think, wow, the amount of history that this place has seen and how that's had an impact on mythology and on stories that have been sort of passed down over time and over space, and just how much of an impact that's had on so many people and so much. It's wonderful.
And what it says about our connection, I think that it's just so easy to feel like humanity is completely divided, that everything is polarized, that we all exist in these like little niches, and we can never cross these gulfs between us. And the existence and the survival of stories that endure, like you said, across time,
Mm,
space, culture, millennia, um, just proves that it makes you feel that there is a thread of connection, that there is something that holds
absolutely.
us together, that humanity has got something we can hold on to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think because I tackle mythology from all different pantheons all over the world, and one thing that I found so intriguing from doing that is this thread of connection, because there are so many stories that are so similar
Hmm.
from places and times that are completely like polar opposites, and you would never
Yeah.
think. But there are these stories that just run through that have the same themes or the same moral lessons, and it's very unifying, I think, when you start to really look at these stories and try to get an understanding of them. And you're absolutely right, it is a thread that just connects. It's like a through line for
Mm.
everything. When it comes to those stories, you've explored so many fascinating women from mythology already. So what about Aphrodite was it that made you want to center her story in this next book?
It it felt like a real departure for me. And this novel, so it's the first one not to be named after the protagonist.
That was on my list of things I was going to ask you. You beat me to it. That's one of my questions.
Yeah, it's
Mm,
and that's really to signal the fact that this is a step into a different genre, a different subgenre, and that this is my first romance and
mm,
not one that I thought that I would ever write, because I'd actually been asked a few years ago at an event at Durham University, I think it was. Somebody said, "Oh, will you ever write a romance?" And I was just like, "Absolutely not. Greek mythology has got no romance in it. Nothing is ever consensual. Nothing is ever healthy.
mm-hmm,
Can't possibly tell a love story from Greek mythology." So I completely dismissed it out of hand. And I think it was only a few weeks after that conversation that the idea for this Immortal Heart popped into my head. And a novel idea doesn't always come like that. It doesn't always descend out of the blue, but this one really, really did.
mm,
Um, I think I would have discounted the idea of ever writing about Aphrodite. I'd written Hera, and that was my first shift into a goddess, into writing about an immortal character. Um, but to write about Aphrodite, I wouldn't have known where the anchor was going to be. And it turned out that actually it was in this love story with Ares, that it was this one constant that she keeps coming back to
mm,
across all of her stories, across all of her lovers, all of her affairs, all of the tumult and the chaos of Aphrodite's existence. Ares, the god of war, somebody who you would expect to be a source of just more chaos, more conflict, more drama, is this really steady presence. And there was just something just immediately so intriguing about that as an idea, about how you could have two very primal divinities, you know, whose domains, whose realms are really about these like the passions and the desires, kind of the from the darkest to the most hopeful, um, that exist within people, that they could come together and that they could create something that has some semblance of
Mm.
stability, is quite astonishing. And so I wanted to delve into, okay, well, why is that? What is it about these two? It's kind of the ultimate enemies to lovers, opposites attract idea. Why has it got such a hold, on me, on us, on Greek mythology, that these two just they can't keep away from each other?
Yeah, I mean, and it's like I said, it's interesting because I was going to ask you what made you choose that title, and I suppose that makes complete sense because it is a departure from the sort of stuff that you've centered before. And I guess when someone asks you a question in like that, are you going to write a romance? And you sort of think no, but it just plants a seed, doesn't it? And then you sort of I feel like even if I tell myself I can't do something or I won't do something, I feel like that's like a challenge to myself, and then I'll start thinking about it. But
Yeah.
like you say, and I've got a few questions about Ares and Aphrodite's relationship specifically, so it's good that you mentioned that. There is nothing better than an enemy lover's story. There's nothing better than this sort of it's very gripping, isn't it, when it's two complete opposites. People just love that. It gives you a lot of, I guess, scope to explore that juxtaposition and how that can bring them together, but also potentially push them apart as well.
Mhm.
Um, was there anything emotionally difficult or unexpected that you found writing about Aphrodite?
So I think that it's very so I think what was less surprising to me was the fact that, like the other women of Greek mythology that I had written about, there is this gulf between common perceptions of Aphrodite and Aphrodite as she really is in the mythology, and in her worship, that because it's so easy always to tell stories about a woman that diminish her and reduce her to the most kind of trite and
Yeah.
misogynistic of the stereotypes that can define her. And so when it comes to Aphrodite, it's just very easy to present her as vapid, as insipid, as meddling, um, and as somebody who's kind of fundamentally really, really trivial. Um, and of course, the whole the whole sphere of love and desire is the opposite of trivial.
Mm.
It is the grounding of kind of everything that we do in life is motivated and underpinned by love and by desire. So she occupies this incredibly important space, first of all. But then I think it's also really interesting to look at her in the pantheon of the Olympian gods and to see her as this surprisingly subversive force, because I think that you can see her very much, and I'm thinking specifically in terms of sculpture, in terms of the way that we see her represented,
Mm-hmm.
in statues that we'll see in museums, where she's very coquettish, where she's very coy, where she's kind of always like kind of dropping her dress to
Mm-hmm.
accidentally expose herself, and it's very much like the male gaze. This is how we see Aphrodite, as this symbol of perfect female beauty and an object of male desire. And that would make her fit very neatly into what the patriarchy demands of women. And yet she is this really destabilizing, really challenging force among the rest of the gods. Because Aphrodite is a is the most dangerous thing that you can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
And she's a woman who chooses for herself. She decides who her lovers are going to be, and she has this freedom afforded to her that no other goddesses have. It's always been it's I always think it's so interesting that you have these 12 Olympians and only Hera is married. And the other goddesses find a way to stay single or to stay unshackled. Um, and with Aphrodite, she's not like Athena, like Hestia, like Artemis, she's not going to be a virgin goddess. She's not going to be untouched by men. She's going to go out and she's going to do what she wants to do, and she's going to do it with impunity. Um, and that makes her, I think, quite frightening. To a male
Absolutely.
audience, to the other gods, to Zeus, because she represents a threat to the whole established order just by being a woman with agency.
No, and that's absolutely right. I think, obviously I've explored a lot of these stories again from various cultures, and there is nothing scarier to the patriarchy than feminine sexuality and feminine, power. There's nothing more frightening, and you see that in the original stories anyway. And then when Christianity comes along a little bit later on in time, that gets even more so that
Mm.
there is nothing scarier than a woman with agency, um, which is why we live in a patriarchal society, probably. Speaking of love, did writing this story change your understanding, your perception of love in any way?
I think that writing this novel just made me really examine love more broadly, and think about what role a goddess of love can play in the 21st century. Because I'm obviously my novels are set in the Bronze Age. These are ancient stories, and I set them within the ancient world. But I am writing them as a feminist in the 21st century for readers who are also living in the modern age. So what do they have to offer to us now? Why are we still retelling them? I guess is what it comes down to. So what do you do with a love goddess? Because it seems like a concept that really belongs in the past, because when you are kind of sifting through Aphrodite's mythology, you are coming up as a modern reader against you kind of bump on these issues that never seem to trouble ancient writers, but issues around consent, for example. Um, so if Aphrodite has got this ability to go around and make people desire each other, then I had to really grapple with, well, what is that going to mean? How is that going to translate on the page if she is somebody who I've just, extolled the virtues of her having her own agency, her own autonomy, her own right to choose, if she goes and overrides that for other people. And I had to think about the way that sex is used in mythology, particularly when it comes to gods like Zeus, the way he wields it as a weapon, um, the way that he enacts desire feels like it has nothing to do with Aphrodite herself. And so, again, there's always ways in which everything can be traced back and blamed on a woman. And so sometimes Zeus is kind of saying, well, Aphrodite has enchanted me to fall in love with this nymph. And I use the word in love extremely euphemistically. Um, and so, it's probably just like her fault anyway. And I don't have to take responsibility for it. And that's one way that you can present a love goddess. And that's obviously not the avenue that I went down. For me, what Zeus does, the way that sex is used um, in these myths so often, where women are assaulted just repeatedly, that's the entirety of the metamorphoses, basically. Um, that this is not going to be anything to do with what Aphrodite is overseeing. Her So I had to like very much kind of separate what it is that she is doing and what it is that she stands for. And it was really important to me that Aphrodite is a goddess of love for everybody, that even though her stories, she's part of this very famous love triangle between her Ares and Hephaestus. So she has a very kind of determinedly heterosexual tradition in terms of like that main myth. But she's a goddess of love for everybody. And so it was really important to me to represent that throughout the pages, that she is going to champion and celebrate all kinds of love
Mm.
for all kinds of people. And that what she's doing has got value and purpose in the world. So it is not to do with overriding people's consent. It is not to do with stirring up trouble. It is about this primal force that is one of the aspects that makes life worth living. I kind of have her make that point within the novel that the other gods, the other goddesses even, Demeter has the harvest and Hestia is keeping the hearth burning. They have got these functions of survival, and Aphrodite is giving us all something that actually makes surviving worth doing.
And which aspect of Aphrodite do you hope that readers connect with most emotionally in your version of her story?
Well, it was so interesting to figure out the connection between the reader and Aphrodite, and it was something that really emerged through drafts and drafts of the novel because there are so many ways in which she could feel completely unrelatable. Because, you sort of have a challenge already when you're writing about a goddess because you're writing about somebody immortal, you're writing about somebody with this huge power, you are writing about somebody who has got this incredibly like privileged status. And for Aphrodite as well, she embodies beauty. She's like the most beautiful goddess to have ever existed. So I felt there were so many ways in which she could alienate a reader and that it would be hard to connect. And how do you find a way in? And like I have to confess that the way into Aphrodite that I discovered was via Taylor Swift, which possibly comes slightly out of left field.
For me, I'm a huge Swiftie, so I absolutely, I'm with you. I can see it.
You're there with me already. It's just in terms of, I mean, in terms of like a modern day goddess, in terms of
Mhm.
somebody who wields huge power and status and privilege, and yet we access Taylor Swift's vulnerability through this openness with which she writes her songs. And so you are listening to a song by a billionaire who lives a very gilded life, beyond imagining, and you are thinking, "Oh my God, I feel like exactly the same." Um,
We are the same. Yeah.
we
Yeah.
would probably be best friends.
Literally, yeah. Yeah, we'd be besties, absolutely.
And yeah, and I felt that this is kind of what Aphrodite has to do. That it has to be her openness, it has to be her vulnerability, it has to be her willingness to throw herself into intimacy and to make herself vulnerable
Mm.
and to accept that she will get hurt and to never become kind of cynical and closed off. And yeah, the romanticism and the idealism of her, and the optimism which makes her, which humanizes her. And I felt that this is the way to understand Aphrodite as somebody who, when she falls in love, she really, really falls in love, and and it's going to change the world.
It's really great to hear you talk about something like that and compare it to something modern like Taylor Swift. You laugh a little bit, but actually we are Taylor Swift mythologizes her own life. You
Hmm.
can see it like that because it's because she is so open and vulnerable and confessional in her writing and what she shares, and that does mean that people can access her emotionally. So to draw that comparison is so interesting because it's just it unlocks I think it unlocks something in your brain a little bit and you think, oh my goodness, that's so true. that's so
Yeah.
that's so real. But on the note of sort of love story and Taylor Swift and things, let's talk about Aries a little bit, because you touched on it earlier that they are such extraordinarily opposing figures and what they represent. Um, but what do you think makes them so compatible mythologically?
The starting point is, these are completely opposite spheres, love and war. They couldn't be more different. But of course, that's not really the case when you start to dig a little bit deeper. And when you actually go into Aphrodite's origins and how this goddess kind of came to be,
Mm.
that she arose from the goddesses who preceded her, who actually governed over both, who were dealing with sex and death, with love and war. So you had Inanna and you had Astarte. You had these goddesses who kind of gave rise to Aphrodite. I had the Bettany Hughes book Venus and Aphrodite, where she really kind of traces the origins of Aphrodite's worship and kind of how she ended up in Cyprus and how she ended up in the within the occupying the space that she did. So there's already that element of has that part of Aphrodite been lost? That there were these goddesses who had the battlefield and the bedroom already, and so with Aphrodite, when she becomes just the goddess of love, is there actually a missing half of Aphrodite? And is that who Ares could be, the part of her that was lost, that is restored through him? That was a really romantic way that like to look at it, that it was kind of making Aphrodite, restoring her to what she had been before when she comes together with Ares. But I think as well as that, because that's a little bit more abstract, whereas kind of actually on the page, within the story, within who these characters are, what they really had in common was that they both stand out as different to the others on Mount Olympus. So Aphrodite, she has got a different kind of origin to the other gods. She's born, I mean, my favorite thing about her is that she is born from the castration of Uranus.
Right? Yeah.
It's
It is,
just
yeah. It's a hell of a story, that one. Yeah.
the best of all, and I will never ever accept the version that she's just a daughter of Zeus, because it just absolutely
It's
not.
not as fun. It's not as interesting. It's not as yeah, no, she's not. I
And
agree.
it just doesn't work, you know. I mentioned that I find her a destabilizing force to the patriarchy. Like, kind of, what is more threatening to the patriarchy than a woman who was born from castration? Um,
Yeah, it doesn't get more scary than that. No, not at
and
all.
it's such a spectacular image,
Mm.
that she rises from the sea, and there's this like beautiful woman, but around her, where the drops of blood have fallen, it's the Furies, it's the giants, it's these kind of monstrous creatures that rise up, creatures of destruction and warfare. Um, but she is this beautiful embodiment of desire. It's this incredible paradox, that
Mm.
gives rise to her. So I love that about her anyway. So that makes her different to the other gods, and that makes her stand apart. And the fact that I said as well that she is the goddess who exercises agency, who gets to choose her own lovers. She stands apart. She is different. Ares is different from the others because he's not very welcome. He's feared. He's kind of despised. Everybody knows that you need to have a god of war. Everybody kind of accepts you've got to have wars, apparently. They've got to happen. But nobody really wants to get their hands dirty. Obviously kind of Athena is there within that sort of area, but her kind of approach to warfare is this like very strategic, more detached role, where she's kind of making the decisions, whereas Ares is down there on the battlefield with that battle cry. He is the spirit of kind of violence and destruction, when he's in battle. So that makes him unapproachable, that makes him distant, that makes everybody view him with this kind of suspicion. And so the two of them are already different to everybody else, on Mount Olympus. And there is just something about being two outcasts together,
Mm.
about finding out, what do we have in common, and what enemies do we have in common? And kind of, if we're ranged against everybody else, are we going to become each other's allies?
Yeah, there's a bit of magnetism in that.
Exactly. It's kind of a little bit irresistible.
The differences that they have, what do you think reveal about each other? What do the differences between the reveal about each other? What do they
So,
bring out in each other?
yeah, so I think that I think in falling in love with the Aries, it really challenges Aphrodite to examine her position among the gods. And because she's a goddess who has got the power of charm and persuasion, this is how I saw her surviving in this very cutthroat, very political world of the gods, where really like kind of everybody's about to stab one another in the back given half the chance. She's gonna sail through it with charm, and Ares is gonna stomp through it with hostility. um but I think that in seeing the way that he stands up for himself kind of does open her eyes to the fact that maybe there's a different way of doing things, and maybe there are some things that are actually worth standing up for, and to kind of to rock the boat more openly, and rather than kind of undermining from the inside, sometimes is it going to be worth taking a stand and saying, no, this is what I believe in and this is what matters. So I think that Aries brings out that more openly rebellious spirit within Aphrodite.
Mm.
And I think that she is somebody who can show Aries the converse of that, that sometimes there is a better way than violence, that sometimes there is a different way that you can achieve your aims. And they're always going to be set at odds with one another to some extent. But the fact that they can find a way to see it from each other's perspective, ultimately, that gives you hope that one day maybe love can overcome war.
It's a really gripping dynamic, I think, to see how these two, that in general people would never, you would never say that something so opposite could, two things so opposite could have such a positive sort of impact on each other and come together so naturally. And for me, that's the sort of thing that really hooks me about their relationship. Um, is there anything that really hooks you about their connection that really stands out to you as special?
Yeah, it's so I think it's the fact that Ares, who again you could just very easily paint as a villain, when you compare him to the other gods, he is quite the opposite of that. He so while Aphrodite is like definitely not going to embrace monogamy anytime soon, Ares is actually surprisingly faithful to Aphrodite. You know, he's
Mm.
not really linked to in very many other relationships, very many other affairs. And but more compellingly, more importantly than that, is the fact that of all of the gods, Ares is the only one who was never involved in the assault of a woman. And I think for the goddess of love, you know, what is more appealing than a man who actually takes a woman's desires into account, and for whom a woman's consent is always going to be of paramount importance? That to me just kind of is cut and dried as far as Ares is concerned. The only, you know, he's the god of war, but the only act of personal direct violence that we really see him engaged in is when he's punishing a rapist. And unlike the other gods, he's not doing this himself. So that really makes Ares, if you have to pick a romantic hero from Greek mythology, you have got slim pickings. So
Oh yeah.
that puts Ares
Oh yeah.
head and shoulders above the competition.
Yeah, because it is such a common theme across Greek myth that consent is not, it's just not there, is it? It's so many of the stories involve assault in one way or another, or
Hmm.
non-consensual things. So it is, you would think that that goes hand in hand with the god of war. You would sort of
Yeah.
just to make that assumption, but it's so fascinating that actually it's the opposite, and he um, is, I mean, I don't want to say anyone is a champion of women, so to speak, in Greek mythology, but closer than a lot of other um, male characters that we see across Greek mythology.
Yeah, the
Um,
bar is not very high,
the bar
but
is in hell, I think. Yeah,
he more than clears it.
yeah, yeah. Um, and again, this is something that you sort of briefly touched on about the idea of love and passion and sex in mythology. I always like to think about how that is portrayed, and I think in some tales it's more of a liberating creative force, but like you said, it's sometimes a very destructive
Mm.
force. Do you think, or do you feel that in Greek mythology it's more one than the other, or do you feel there's a balance?
So it's something that I have Aphrodite really have to reckon with the novel. She does have to be confronted at some point with the harm that she causes.
Hmm.
That love is one of the most positive aspects of our lives, but it also causes the most pain, the most devastation to ourselves and to others. So it is something that she has to wrestle with herself, that she kind of has to realize about who she is. And you know, there are myths where Aphrodite is concerned, particularly the myth of Pygmalion and Galatea, Pygmalion being the kind of blueprint for an incel, somebody who
Yes.
despises women and makes his own, and Aphrodite grants him that wish. I thought it would be really interesting to explore for Aphrodite what the consequences of granting that wish might actually be. So that was a really important thread within the novel for me as well, to bring Galatea into it. So yeah, I wanted both of those aspects to be present, for it not to be this clear cut, well, love is good and war is bad. There's no way in which I can find a way that war is good. But there are certainly ways in which love can be this destructive and harmful force
Mm.
as well. And that's something that Aphrodite has to reconcile.
Yeah, and I think it's a very interesting thing to explore, her having this sort of introspection about it and internal conflict about it, and sort of
Mm.
seeing what the effects of her actions can be. Because, like you say, love can be the most incredible thing, but it can also be the most destructive, awful, awful thing. The highs are high, but the lows are very, very low.
Mhm.
Um, and another thing that I thought a lot about with love is how these immortal beings experience love in relation to time,
Mhm.
because obviously they are immortal. Time is completely different. Do you think that that makes them experience love in a different way? Do you think that affects the way that they experience love?
Yes, so I think that when you look at the myths, Aphrodite and Ares, their relationship is cyclical. It's more one where they keep coming back to one
Mm.
another, rather than an arc that you might see of kind of, oh, they come together and then there's a simple happy ever after. That was a really challenging idea to try and incorporate into the novel because a romance has a particular shape. If you think I'm going to write a romance novel, you know that there is not a formula, but you know that there is a path that romance takes, and to sort of figure out how is a romance between immortals, how is a romance between somebody who's kind of whose whole role is to fall in love over and over again, and how is that going to work? And figuring out time is it's so complicated in all of my novels because Greek mythology is not chronological and time never makes sense whether you're dealing with mortals or gods. So I always have to do a certain amount of rationalizing as far as time goes. When it comes to writing about the gods, though, there's something really liberating in that, and there is something that is just so much fun in allowing time to just really sprawl
Mm.
across the novel and to encompass centuries within a story, especially a love story. I really do enjoy it. But yeah, I think it's my copy editor this time wrote a timeline because the copy editor's job is to make sure that the book makes sense. It's really, really incredible, like detailed and meticulous process that copy editors go through. So she'd written a schedule of kind of, well, I think like not more than 6 months kind of passed here. So how come it's winter again? And and I was replying, kind of going, it's because like actually years have passed. And
It's
this
actually
is
a lot longer than that. Yeah.
yeah. So that was, something for me to go back and address to make sure I was making that passage of time really, really clear. So the reader just feels like they're just swept up in something that is truly, truly epic, and because it spans this incredible length of time.
And speaking of time, a lot of what I speak about on Ladies of Law is the way that all of these wonderful stories they change and they evolve across time and again across cultures, depending on who's doing the retelling and where that retelling is taking place. When you're tackling these myths, how do you balance sort of trying to stay faithful to that original myth, but also making it hit with modern audiences, modern global audiences?
So I I have found that my process has really evolved through writing my novels. I think when I wrote Ariadne, which was my debut, I didn't really expect anyone would ever read that book, because you don't when you're writing
Mm.
a book that's really just for yourself. You dream of getting it published, but you don't think that's really going to happen. So I didn't worry too much about it. I thought, I'm going to tell the version of Ariadne's story that I want to tell. So I sort of stitched together different myths in the way that served the story the best. And really, that is the fundamental core of my process because the story is always going to be, I'm always going to do what serves the story, and that's a story that I want to tell. Not a story that's been told before because there would be no point in doing that. But when I came to write my second novel, when I came to write Electra, I definitely kind of let a lot of worry kind of creep in around this idea of being accurate or being faithful or kind of not getting things wrong. I basically felt that I was going to have like a load of angry classicists reading over my shoulder as I was
People do
typing.
get precious about their favorite mythological characters, so I can understand that. Yeah,
They do, but I will say that actually, like the classics community has been really, really welcoming, and
that's
so
great.
so warm when it comes to these novels. And you know, I think like anybody who is really truly engaged with myths does know that there are multiple versions, that there is no such thing as like the correct myth or the definitive myth. I mean, God, like, can't we seeing it all play out with the Odyssey discourse right now, Christopher Nolan's Odyssey?
Yeah,
People
absolutely.
kind of trying to insist that they know what the right version is, and you just think we're talking about mythology, we're talking about something that shapeshifts, and we're talking about something that exists in order to be reinterpreted, um, and something that has been passed down initially orally, and so every single time it was told, it was something completely reborn, something new. That is what mythology is. So I was really kind of painting myself into a corner and wrestling myself into this just impossible position of trying to please everybody. I did. I mean, I do a lot of research for all of my novels. I bet when it came to a lecture, I was trying to do justice to every single possible text that I could. I had like the Iliad and the Odyssey. I had all of the tragedies yeah, of Aeschylus, Sophocles, Euripides, that deal with that myth cycle. I was really, really trying to cover absolutely everything. And still make it a story that was just mine, and still add in some original element, you know, character, a storyline that was unique to me. Um, and I think that finding a balance of those is what I'm always striving to do, which is, I mean, just partly it's fun. It's fun for me and it's fun for readers to find Easter eggs planted all the way through, to find like a little nod to a myth that you recognize, or to a character, or to a different interpretation. This is how kind of deep into it with the lecture that I got, that I had Cassandra describe Helen as being like a cloud, and that's my little oblique nod to the Euripides version where she doesn't come to Troy, but a cloud version of her goes. So I was really like trying to cover absolutely every reference that you could possibly get. Um, so I really like to do that. I like to play with the with just nodding to the reader. Oh yeah, there's another version of this that I'm going to just reference. I'm going to kind of obliquely refer to. Um, but I think less and less do I feel like I have got to adhere to a rigid orthodoxy around it, because there is none, because it is a fruitless task, because there is no point. And even if there was, then it would exist, and why would I be recreating that? And so I found, especially moving into stories of the goddesses, with Hera and then with Aphrodite, that I feel this freedom and also compulsion to create something original, and to put in my own my own ideas about the story that have not been told, and have not been told in that way before. So enough, you know, that there is enough of the mythology to be satisfying, but also you are going to get a new story.
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of mythology, is that it is like you say, it's they start off as these oral tales. They are naturally changed. They've probably changed millions and millions of times since the
Mhm.
very first time. But I think there's so much to be said about that. I think there's so much beauty, and that's a big part of the interest of it. Is, you know, why did this person tell this story and add that or take that away in this time, and then in this time and place it's completely different. Why was that? And one of the things I love thinking about is that, what are those differences? Why are they there? What, you know,
Mhm.
social, cultural, political context was there when this was told here in comparison to this version of it here? And I think that's it. I think it's amazing. It's I love it. I love reading all the different versions, and
Yeah.
you know, I think it's just fantastic. And especially with these stories that are about female characters, because something that is abundantly clear to me and has become increasingly even more clear to me is how much of an impact it has that traditionally these stories and the history of them are told or have been remembered through the perspectives of men.
Hmm.
We've had men writing the history books for, a long time. So
Yeah.
it's so good to see, and what I love to see is that there's been such a surge in women reclaiming these stories and actually telling not just myth but history as well through a female perspective, which is just incredible to see. And I guess that leads me to another question for you, which is how important do you think that perspective is when it comes to changing that emotional impact of these stories?
Yeah, just so deeply important.
Mm,
You don't really realize that you have been receiving these stories through the male lens
mm,
for so long, and you don't really realize what the impact of that is until you start to look at them from a different perspective, until you kind of open your eyes to like, oh, a hero looks very different when I'm hearing it from through the eyes of the woman that he, maybe abandoned on an island, Theseus,
mhm,
for example. Um, you yeah, and you start to think about all the stories that you've been told and the roles that women occupy within them and how that shapes your perception of yourself and what you can be. And you mentioned history as well as mythology, and I am really inspired always by the work of Dr. Emily Hauser, in
yes, yeah.
particular Mythica, that has recently come out in paperback, where she's taken the work of female scholars and female archaeologists to reconstruct the lives of Bronze Age women as they existed. The kind of the archetypes that we find in Homer. Well, who actually were these women? And you populate the other half of this world that has been missing. You realize that women were not just kind of secondary and just sort of hanging around while history happened,
Mm,
but they were making it happen as well. And we just haven't heard those voices. But it doesn't mean that those voices didn't exist. So to do our best to recover those voices, through the historical side and through the mythological, through the storytelling side as well. I think it really, really fundamentally reshapes our understanding of not just what has gone before, but what can come in the future. I think there is such a push at the moment to, well, and there probably always is, but like I'm really, really seeing at the moment, and sorry, excuse me.
it's okay.
Yeah, I'm really seeing this push to create a different kind of mythology, to mythologize this past that didn't exist. This very kind of trad wife, submissive woman. This is how this is the role that women are meant to occupy, and like kind of feminism has been this distorting force that has come up in the 20th and the 21st century, and it's made everybody much more unhappy. And in fact, the problem is not feminism; the problem is capitalism. But we could be here for a long time if we.
Yeah. Oh, we
Well,
could, yeah, a whole can of
um,
worms.
but yeah, this idea that there is something kind of natural in making women submissive and making women inferior, and saying that actually women just are only designed to and only really want to stay at home and have babies and look after the house. It's such a poisonous narrative that you cannot believe that it keeps coming back like knotweed or something. It's just
Wild.
so patently false when you
Yeah.
look at any time period. It has just never been the case. It never will be the case. Um, so I think it is really important to not let other people, kind of bad actors, go back and take these stories and tell them in a way that reinforces a really damaging perception of an attitude towards women. But to actually say, oh, look, women have always been here and they have always mattered and they have always been human and just as fully human as men are, and they have always embodied these really important
Mm.
roles in real life, in stories. I think it's such a crucial thing to do. I am so grateful to everybody else who's doing it.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's been so great to see so many incredible retellings from by females about females, and let's be honest, probably for females a lot of the time. The audience
Yeah.
tends to be females, but it's empowering, it's liberating, and And from even from history as well, the British Library did an incredible medieval women exhibition that I went to. It was amazing because,
It was wonderful.
you know, you ask somebody off the street, what do you think women were doing in medieval Britain? And they'll just probably say not a lot. But actually, they were doing amazing things. You know, they weren't just there having babies, and it's not it's not been like that. And
No, you've always had women
yeah,
warriors. You've always had women in healthcare. You've always had
yeah,
women in science and technology. You've just always had women innovating and women doing things. Um,
mm,
all throughout time. And I think as well, just to kind of widen it out a little bit more, it's also, I think, the stories, not just from a female perspective, but also we are seeing a lot more queer stories come through, a lot more stories um, with more diversity of race. And, you know, again, like this is coming
mm,
up with all of the Odyssey discourse, people kind of getting really distraught that there are characters of color. So again, we just need
yeah.
to keep reinforcing. No, the ancient world was a big place. It was a very diverse place, and people of all different sexualities, genders, races have always existed and have always had a really important role to play.
Yeah, I had a similar conversation with Ayana Gray, who wrote I,
Yes.
Medusa. We were speaking about race and how, you know, again, the average person off of the street would say that you ask them, you know, do you think there was diversity in medieval Europe? They would say no, but actually, yes, there was. There has been
Mm,
diversity, all, you know, everywhere for the longest time. And I think you can't force people to educate themselves, but you sometimes you just want, you just want to say, like, there is so much world and so much history to learn. Like, if you went and wanted to open your mind to that, you would see that actually the world is a lot more than what you've been told it is, or it has been a lot more than what you've been told it is, because you've been told it through this very one specific lens. Um,
yeah.
I love it. I mean, that's what I talk about all the time. That's I could talk about it for hours and hours, and I do. Um, to add to that, I think. Do you think there's something even, maybe even a little bit more? I want to say radical, but I guess it is about allowing this mythological woman to narrate herself rather than it being from anyone else's perspective.
Yeah, that was really important to me from the start. When I set out to write Ariadne, it was really directly in response to um, Ovid's Heroides, which does give voice to all of these women. And it's so fascinating. It's so fascinating to me that Ovid, an extremely problematic seeming man,
Hmm.
in many ways, wrote this collection of letters in the voices of these mythological heroines, and they're really, really good. And Ariadne's letter, it is the oh my God, the word's completely gone out of my head. It's the quote at the start of the novel. So it was writing Ariadne was yeah in direct response to the line in Ovid's Heroides where she says, "Don't forget me. Don't forget to tell people what I did in the labyrinth." And of course, Theseus did forget, just slipped his mind, just like changing the
Yes,
sails on his ship, slipped his mind. So his father died and he became the king. All very convenient. But yeah,
terrible memory.
terrible memory. But always seems to work out to his advantage.
Mm.
Um, yeah, it was the power in those lines of this woman calling out across the centuries and saying, "Don't forget what I did." And I wanted her to be able to say it for herself, and that has stayed true throughout all of my novels, that I want these women to tell their own stories.
Yeah, and again, that's just empowering, isn't it? And it's just it all feeds into the reclaiming these stories and these narratives, and I think fleshing out these characters, because a lot of the time they are defined by maybe one particular part of their story or one particular part of their personality, and put into these little boxes, these little categories of, you know, good, bad, jealous, etc.,
Mhm.
etc. But I think we lose something. We lose a lot when we put these female figures into these boxes. So being able to talk, have them talk for themselves and tell their own stories and see into their minds and emotions and motivations, it does make them a lot more three-dimensional than what they sometimes are and what they have been.
Yeah, I think it's the ability to show women as flawed, as complex,
Mm.
and when they are speaking their own voices, they exist in relation to all of these other people in their lives as well, all of these other relationships, not just the relationship with the man that has defined them. So, like Hera is Zeus's jealous wife, for example, but you get to see them as sisters, daughters, mothers, wives, friends, like every aspect of who they are and every aspect of how they relate to other women, other men, other people in their lives. It's really giving women permission to be as difficult and as dislikable and as complicated as male characters are always allowed to be, and to just, yeah, not to let them be defined by one aspect and not to present them as perfect and not to present them as, um, all one thing. But just, I think
Yeah.
when you hear somebody's voice, you hear them as a whole person.
I have some slightly more fun questions now, just to try and like get us into the to your headspace and your environment for when you've been writing, when you were writing this Immortal Heart. But if you've moved on to another one, maybe your vibe changes on depending on what you're writing. So
Oh my
that'd
God,
be
it does
interesting to
actually,
know.
yeah.
Um, so did you have or do you usually have like a soundtrack or a playlist? Any songs, artists, things that get you in the zone. So did you have anything like that for Aphrodite? You mentioned Taylor Swift already, so I'm intrigued to know if there was any Taylor Swift involved in this.
Always so much Taylor Swift involved in my creative
Oh,
process.
lovely.
Yeah, so I don't listen to music while I'm writing. I listen to sounds of the ocean or sounds of the forest, or more latterly, I have complete silence because I have a puppy and I'm listening
Oh,
to if he's
is he
causing
chewing
havoc
anything?
anywhere in the house. Yeah, listening for the sound of chewing. Um,
I have three dogs, and yeah, I'm surprised I haven't heard them yet. But
yeah. So I don't listen to anything with words while I'm
mm,
writing. So because that would just confuse me. But there will be songs that embody the novel. And for Aphrodite, it is a Taylor Swift song. Sorry, but it is,
no, no, don't apologise.
and it is.
Own it.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not sorry at all.
No, don't be.
It is very specifically a deep cut, the live in Paris version of Daylight, which I would like
Ah,
anybody to go and listen
ah,
to.
yes.
It was symbolic to me as well because Daylight is a song that really did not grab me on the album,
Mm,
the studio album. It wasn't, it wouldn't have kind of made my top 10 or anything. It was just a song that was like, okay, it's there, it's
mhm,
fine. When I heard the Live in Paris recording, it became something completely different. Um, it's became suddenly like really alive,
mm,
really beautiful, really full of meaning. You can hear the anticipation of the crowd as she's singing. And I mean, it's always going to be the bridge in a Taylor Swift song, but that bridge I used to think love was burning red, but it's golden.
golden.
I just had that in my head in every scene that I wrote about Aphrodite and
Mm,
Ares, this idea that what you thought love was going to be, or what you thought somebody was going to be, and then the discovery that it is something different and better than you ever imagined.
mhm.
It was just that is the novel for me. So that is what I would recommend that people play on
Oh,
repeat
do you
when
know,
they read it.
it's a deep cut, but it's a wonderful deep cut. I love what I think she does Death by a Thousand Cuts in that as well, and it's so good,
It's
so
really,
good.
really good. Cornelia Street as well.
I am such a Swiftie. Yeah, so I'm right there with you. And now I will forever associate that song with that book. Um, and what kind of atmosphere do you have? Do you like lights on, lights off, candles, anything?
So I was burning. I have previously had a specific scented candle for all of my novels.
Mm,
Since I didn't for the first one because I wrote the first one like really ad hoc. I was teaching.
mm,
I had like a small child who didn't sleep. I was writing that one most of the time sitting outside his bedroom door waiting for him to go to sleep, just
mhm,
sitting on the hallway carpet. So that one was like a lot less kind of refined. But then for all the others, I've had a specific scented candle. So I know for Atalanta, it was this kind of foresty, like one that
mm,
smells of trees and everything. For Aphrodite, it's this really beautiful diptyque candle that my agent sent me. That smells of berries. So
mhm,
it's like very kind of rich and sensuous. Um, yeah, the novel that I'm currently writing has so far got no associated candle, and no kind of calming rituals. I was writing the others. I've created like a little study in my house, repurposed a spare room and made it my writing space. But for this one, so yeah, so Aphrodite was written like in lovely surroundings,
Mm.
pink walls, scented candles, sounds of the ocean, really, really nice. This one is being written around toilet training a puppy. So,
There
it's
is, yeah, there's
entirely
no peace. You
right.
never know peace when you're at that stage with a dog.
No.
My youngest dog is 3, so he's only just come out of the I'm gonna chew everything
Oh
sort
my
of
God.
phase.
I
Yeah.
didn't know there was that much longer to go.
Well, he maybe he's about two and a half, two and a half when he stopped wanting to chew everything, and now
Mhm.
he's an angel and that, and he can do no wrong. But for a while, I thought, I didn't need that. I didn't need to be. You sort of have moments where you think you're so cute, but I really don't like you sometimes.
Oh, every
Uh,
single day. Yeah.
yeah, they do push you to like almost nervous breakdown level, especially when you're trying to, you know, write. I can imagine that's not easy, but you.
Yeah, it has kind of reinvigorated the creative process for
Mm.
me in a weird way, I will say, because I think I had got into like a pattern where I knew exactly what I was doing. And then this is something challenging that's come along. So now I'm taking my laptop downstairs and I'm writing in the kitchen and I'm writing in much shorter bursts because I don't have these
Mm.
kind of long, the luxury of these uninterrupted stretches of time. And something different is coming
Little
out of
sprinkle
it.
of
So
chaos. Yeah.
yeah, I think it's always worth shaking things up.
Yeah, I think there is a lot to be said about taking yourself to a different space, you know.
Mm.
I think especially during COVID, I think we all got used to sort of working and living and doing leisure in the same space.
Yeah,
And then when you get yourself out somewhere else, they call it, well, the third space or something, it's like, oh, my brain works in a different way in this
it
sort of
does.
space. So maybe, yeah, your advice to everyone would be go and get a naughty puppy, and
Oh
that'll
my God, don't get a puppy.
don't
Please,
do it,
whatever
don't.
you take from this podcast, don't get a puppy. They are
Yeah,
really
I would
cute.
actually echo that. Yeah, don't do it. Yeah, don't.
But
Eric,
also,
don't.
they are gorgeous.
They are, yeah, no, they're lovely. They are love and war, actually, if we're going to bring it back to if we can bring it back to mythology. Um okay, if you could spend one day with any figure from Greek mythology, who would you pick?
Oh, so do you know, I've always gone for like the really safe option. I've always said it'll be Hestia and we'll just
Mm.
hang out by the fire and nothing bad will happen. You
Relax.
will always be safe. And I always imagine that Hestia probably has the best gossip because she can see everything that's going on,
Yeah,
but she's not involved. I think she would be a great best friend. So you could just go and hear
just
all the
relax.
drama at a safe
Yeah.
remove. So yeah, so actually no, maybe I am still going to say Hestia, but I'm feeling a lot more outdoorsy nowadays, what
Mm.
with dog and
Mm.
everything. So I'm maybe going to say Artemis, and we could just run
Yes.
through the forests
Take
under
the
the
dog.
moonlight. Take the dog. She has a dog. She likes dogs. So
Tire them out, and then it might go to sleep when you get home.
yes, I think if anyone is gonna get the dog into shape, it is going to
It
be
would be, yeah.
Artemis.
That
So
makes absolute sense.
yeah.
Um, do you have any sort of favorite obscure or underrated Greek myth stories, or anything you've learned while you've been doing all the research for these novels? Anything obscure that you've just really found fun to learn about?
So many things always do come up in the writing
Mm.
process, and I'm always so sad that when my editors cut them out. But they do need to be cut
Yeah.
out. I think with Aphrodite, one of my favorite stories that I found about her. And there is a nod to it at the start of the novel. He didn't disappear completely, but it's the figure of Neretes, who is this
Mm.
very minor sea god. He is the god of shellfish, which I found adorable.
That is very cute.
Just, you have the goddess of love who's like in charge of
Mm.
like all human and divine hearts. And then you have this god of shellfish who's just like overseeing like what the crabs are
Crabs.
doing.
Yeah.
I love it. And she falls in love with him, and she falls really, really hard for him. To the extent that she actually wants to take him up to Mount Olympus and have him as her consort. She wants to elevate him. And Neretes turns her down, which, I mean, I
It's a
don't know
lot of
what
crabs
I'm thinking.
to be dealing with. These I can't. Sorry, I can't leave my shellfish.
I feel like it's not the demands of his job,
Mm.
to be honest. But anyway, he doesn't go. And she's so absolutely furious
Mm.
at being scorned that she turns him into a little sea snail. There's a really delicious irony in that. And it is,
Mm.
it does not cast Aphrodite in the best light.
No.
Is it something Taylor Swift would do? Maybe. She might
I
do.
think I wouldn't put it past her. She can be petty. But at least she owns the pettiness, you know? So,
Exactly, exactly. So I felt that, you could incorporate it into Aphrodite's
mm,
story, and it was there in an earlier draft, but it didn't actually make the final cut. Nerites is there, but he does
mm.
not turn into a sea snail. But in my heart, I know that
In your heart, he will forever be the snail.
Mhm.
um, what do you hope that modern readers maybe reconsider about these ideas of femininity, um, especially in myth, after reading this Immortal Heart?
I think it's just that love and femininity are not trivial things. I
Mm.
think it is about affording them the respect that they deserve, and just to not dismiss these as being girly or unimportant or kind of like not as significant as the manly business
Mm.
of having wars and running the world, that actually who is keeping the world going. I always think about this when I think about the division of the realms between Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades, where Zeus takes the heavens, Poseidon takes the seas, Hades takes the underworld. And I always just imagine their sisters standing there going like, well, when are we going to draw lots? You
Guys.
know, excuse me.
Yeah.
But actually, their three sisters, Hera, Demeter, and Hestia, the realms that they get, the harvest, the hearth, and marriage, are these are not just symbolic titles in the way that the men's titles are. They're about territory. They're about this is what we rule
Mm.
over. And then what the goddesses take, those three goddesses, is they take the actual running of the world. They
Yeah.
like this is how the world turns. We feed people. We have light and we have warmth. And the ability to, keep ourselves safe and have companionship. And we have the continuation of the family. We have the stability of marriage, even though here, obviously, not an example of a very happy marriage, but um, it is kind of, it is, uh, for me, this is all about the difference between female labor, the invisible female labor, and the kind of much more kind of visible grandeur of what men take on. And I just think it's always worth reconsidering that. And the same applies to the other goddesses like Aphrodite. It's not an unimportant thing that she does. It's actually really, really fundamental to everybody's life.
Yeah, I think invisible labor is like such a deep topic that it's still it's still happening now. You know, women are still the ones doing the things that keep you going, that keeps the world turning, really, like, realistically. It's a whole thing that I could talk about for a long time, but hopefully this, what you said there, and reading this Immortal Heart will open up those conversations and get people thinking about that, and thinking about Aphrodite and just these themes in a different way. And I always like it when something sort of unlocks something in your brain, and you read something that really opens up something in you, and you can start to see things from a different perspective. I think that is about all I have today. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been a really lovely conversation. It's been so nice to talk to you. It's just great to hear more about Aphrodite and your process, and the world of this Immortal Heart.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me.
Thank
It was
you.
a really fun conversation. So
Yeah,
thank you.
you are very welcome now. I really, really do appreciate it. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thanks a lot. You too.
Thank you. Take care. And that was my fascinating conversation with Jennifer. I was a bit starstruck. I won't lie. I had moments where my mind went blank because I just realised I'm talking to Jennifer Saint. I'm talking to Jennifer Saint. Why is Jennifer Saint talking to me? But it was such a wonderful experience to get to talk to her. I'm so honoured. I'm so grateful to Jennifer for giving me her time. And I really hope that you guys have enjoyed that conversation. If you have, please let me know. And I promise I will be back very, very soon to unravel another thread in the very rich tapestry that is women in mythology and folklore.